The Notcast, life, love and misery and deep shit.
Do you ever wonder, what the fuck am I doing here? Is this it? Maybe you've got the car, career, house, family and friends, everything that should make you happy, but still there's this tenacious sense of being trapped, stuck, lost, or just a bit bloody empty. Welcome to the Notcast podcast, where two therapist coaches, aka theracoaches, lay bare their psycho-spiritual journey of struggle, strife, and realization in their soul search for the keys to a happier, more fulfilling life.
So, episode number 8. People-pleasing. People-pleasing. 3 secrets to setting better boundaries and stop doing shit you don't want to do.
Whoop, whoop. I second that. Yes, please.
So, I don't know about you, but I had a bit of a challenge with this episode. We're doing the prep for this episode. Because at first I was like, oh, people-pleasing, I've done that. And then I thought, when I tried to rack my brain for my experience of people-pleasing, I was like, I don't think I did, actually. And I'm pretty sure I did this with I think I did this with the anxiety episode. No, anxiety's not me. I haven't had any of that. And then it all came, I was like, oh, actually, yes, I did. Oh, the power of denial. But yeah, I realised I did. But I had a bit of a polarising experience, I realised, where in some contexts I'd be really people-pleasy. But in other contexts I'd almost like be completely avoidant of that and just be like, no. Like straight off the bat, like no. Like just no discussion.
I get that. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I guess what I realised was that because I didn't think I was as people-pleasy as I have been, but I feel like I existed in the belief that the only way I could get love was to people-please.
Right.
And validation and acceptance and acknowledgement and a sense of self-worth. Yeah, that was my biggest discovery while reflecting on people-pleasing, was that that was my sole way of getting, well, obviously my illusion that that's how I got love and acceptance and all of those things. So yeah, that was a big realization.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
It's just a minor thing.
Just a little thing, you know, just another day.
My sole way of validating my existence on Earth is people-pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was quite sad when I discovered that, to be honest. But I guess that's the thing about this, right? If you don't see it, you can't change it. So
100%. Well, let me start by asking you then, Amy. What does people-pleasing mean to you?
I guess, yeah, repeating what I said. It was a way of being and doing is the neatest way that I can sum it up. I think my conditioning also dictated that that was the way to be selfless and not selfish and was to just give all of the time. I think the biggest part of it was I gave to my own detriment. And that's, for me, is the line around people pleasing as such. It's like, it was always, well, mostly to my detriment.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I thought about people pleasing, like I said, I was thinking of the stereotype I had in my head was the real, that real kind of, I want to say fawning personality of, I'll do anything, almost really pleading. Mm-hmm. And that, I didn't resonate with that. I was like, that's not me. But the more I thought about it, the kind of people pleasing that came out for me was more of a fear-based thing. Like where I would be people-pleasy, which is now an adjective.
Yeah, nice.
To create an adjective to be people-pleasy.
Yes, you heard it here first.
It was really, it came up in context of where there was a fear of if I stand up for myself or if I say something different. Because interestingly for me, I was employed by the same company for a number of years, and I felt very safe there.
Mm-hmm.
And because after being there a while, like I was well connected within the management and directors team. There was just this sense of like I was safe. Like I did in my mind, there was no way I was going to get fired. Like I don't think that was true, but in my mind, I felt okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was disagreeable as fuck. Like there was no real people pleasing about me that I recall. It was like if I disagreed, I'd be happily to be the only person there in the boardroom, just being like, completely agree.
No, I don't do that.
But it was because I felt safe. It was because I felt safe. I felt safe from the loss, from the rejection, from all of that stuff. I felt safe. So there was no. But for me, what I'm reflecting, it was different in relationships for me. And when I was reflecting, there were some relationships I realized where I felt safe, like I had in my mind, they're not going to leave.
Yeah.
Or there won't be a negative consequence. And then there were some where there would be, and then that would be where I would not do the thing. And I can think of one specifically where I could say, it was about guilt, but it was more about, well, long story short, I was afraid that if I left, that she would hurt herself.
Yeah.
But then the thing there, you could say that was guilt, but it was actually it was still fear, because it was fear about the guilt I might experience if
that happened.
If that happened, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I hear you. It's interesting. I feel like some of my struggle with it was that it's the context of it is quite wide for me in my life. So it goes from, like, one of the things I was reflecting on that came up for me is how I am, even if like people walk past me. Like I'm apologetic for being in the way before I've even got anywhere close to them. It's just like, what the fuck is that?
I'm terribly sorry for my existence.
Yeah, sorry I'm in the way, even though I'm at the other end of the road right now. And the amount of effort I used to go to say please and thank you and sorry, and yeah, like if somebody bumped into me, I'd say sorry. Right? So it went from that level all the way into all of my relationships. And interestingly, the place I didn't find it, or don't when I reflect on it, is the relationship with my children.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's the space where it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting for people that are listening to maybe reflect on that. Where does it show up?
Yeah, it's interesting you say about because I still find it actually if I go to the supermarket, I'm still a bit like, am I in the way? Am I in the, like, I've almost got this feeling of like, am I in someone's way? But I don't know if that's people pleasing. I mean, I want to say that's just out of a politeness thing, but I'm sure there's probably something a bit deeper there. Probably because if I think about being the person who just stands there to be like, fuck you, I'm looking at the eggs and you can fucking wait. I feel like a bit of a dick for that. Maybe that does fit into the context of people pleasing. I'm not sure. I didn't consider that actually when I was reflecting.
Yeah. That's interesting as well, because then, yeah, so where is the line of people pleasy and not people pleasy? It's just like, yeah, because I don't know if I wouldn't really want to be that person in the aisle that's just taking up the space and having zero awareness. And then I used to tell myself it was around awareness. It's like my awareness is switched on. I'm just aware of people. But then part of me thinks I'm overly aware to that point of being apologetic and, yeah, apologetic for my own existence, being in the way of you getting the eggs.
Even though I also need eggs.
Yes, even though I also just want some eggs.
Who has the right to deserve eggs more?
The person that moved out the way.
If we rate on the hierarchy of egg-deservedness, where would you come? Am I higher or are you higher?
Yeah. So I guess that is interesting. It's like, where is the line? When does something become pleasing?
But thinking about it, I think, yeah, like, because for me, there's, there are people, like, let's come back to the supermarket example. There are people, when I've been shopping, where I can see like they just have no awareness of other people around them.
Yep.
because of how they're shopping and how they're just stop in the middle of the aisle, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, there are people, but did you not think there might be someone behind you who might also be pushing their trolley?
Exactly, right? Or taking phone calls in the middle of an aisle. Yes. I fondly refer to them as my zero awareness twats.
Zero awareness twats. I think I just reduced them to a minor judgmental head shake. Silent head shake. And then realised that I'm being a judgmental twat myself.
Yes.
How do I show this person love without actually showing them love? But then the other end of it, I mean, there's the not being aware, but then there is the, well, if I am aware. And I suppose because, that makes me recall almost on a bit of a pontific tangent now about bloody supermarkets and shopping. But I remember there was a guy not long ago when I was in the supermarket, and he could see that I was there. Like, I knew he was aware that I was there, and he was stood there. And I almost just got the sense he wasn't going to even move over, or he was just standing there. So I just went to lean by him and just sort of, excuse mate, and he fucking went off at me. Just for reaching by him, and I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, that kind of spoke to me. I mean, you could say, because of the COVID stuff, it's like, yeah, fair enough. But that spoke to me of, well, hang on a minute. He's obviously got some stuff there about, I know I'm in the way, but fuck you.
Pretty much.
Which in a way is just another version of, oh, I feel I'm in the way and therefore I have to move. Because it's like, okay, I might have the awareness I'm in the way, but yeah, who's to just say that you're more deserving of these eggs than I am? Maybe like, what? Why can't this person wait for me to get my eggs? Like, why in my head am I in the way? Not that I'm overthinking this at all.
I just, the rabbit hole. I am, visioning us in a rabbit hole right now with lots of eggs. That we didn't want.
Although, to be fair, this is exactly what our offline conversations sound like, really. Down the rabbit hole, pontificating about
random shit.
Yeah. Anyway, moving not so swiftly on. What was your first secret to setting better boundaries and stopping doing shit that you don't want to do?
Shall I let you guess? Oh God, there's that sigh.
Is it a 4-letter word?
Yes, it is. It's my favourite 4-letter word.
Oh, this could get terrible. Okay.
I know. That's why I said it.
Go on, put me out of my misery. What is it?
I guess it's learning to love yourself enough to say no.
That's more than 4 letters.
Well, the word love. Okay. Well, it could have been either of my favourite 4-letter words.
Sorry, what was it again?
What, the 4-letter words or the...
Oh, it's one of those days, isn't it? It's one of those episodes.
Yes, it is one of those. No, learning to love yourself enough to say no.
Learning to love yourself enough to say no.
Yeah.
Like it. Tell me more.
I guess it was, for me, the realization that I was constantly putting myself and my needs and wants at the back of the queue, like they didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And on unpicking it and reflecting on it, it was for me the thing around, to get love, I have to do something.
Yeah.
And obviously coming into the understanding that love exists within me, I can't get it from somewhere. Then it was about nurturing the love in me enough to be okay enough to go, actually, I am allowed to say no to things that I really don't want to do, or to be in places that I really don't want to be in. So it was that process of learning that it is okay, I'm okay enough to be able to say no to things that I don't want to do. I don't just have to do them. But it was really difficult until I got into the process where I liked myself first and then moved into reconnecting to the love. So that, and I guess it upped my worth. And for example, so when I mentioned my children and not having that with my children, I would never really ask them to do something they really didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Because I love them.
Right.
And I guess in not showing love to myself, it was okay for me to do that. But as soon as I started to show myself that love, I was able to stop and go, well, you don't have to say yes to something that doesn't feel good. Yeah.
So what made the switch for you, or the change? What changed?
What changed? Moving out of the space where everything was about everybody else. So it was about getting to the space where it was understanding, because it always fell into a thing of, I would rather disappoint me than other people because my worth is less. So it was getting to that space of understanding that my worth is no less. And me just constantly being in this battle of just giving, and being extremely frustrated that I was never receiving the same from people, just put me in this space where I constantly felt like I was lacking.
Right.
So I think the switch at that point was, actually, it's okay for me to ask for what I need and want, but I have to start doing that with myself first and really be able to ask myself, what do I want and need right now? And what I want and need is not to do this. So it was, creating that connection with myself, so that I could really be honest with myself.
Well, that actually does nicely lead succinctly onto my first one, because my first one was, what do I really want or need, and why is it important to me?
That actually did as well. Wow.
Not even faked, not even staged.
Love it.
So what came up for me thinking about this, well, there's a few things. One was that for a long time, I wasn't explicitly sure. I didn't really know what it is I needed, wanted. And sometimes then that was fine, and sometimes it wasn't. So I remember, I had a girlfriend once who we'd sort of fallen into this pattern where she would come over, I'd make dinner, I'd just like disappear into my man cave, play guitar. She'd watch television. I'd might wander out at some point and show her something or talk to her, and then I'd continue to play until whatever time, and then I'd come back out and finish the evening off sitting with her. But I don't remember us ever talking about that. I don't remember that. Now, those were my needs met because I was quite happy.
Yeah.
She's there waiting. I'll go and do my thing, come out. And that was fine for me, obviously. But then I remember then I had a girlfriend again at a later point, and we had quite a difficult relationship, and I was giving a lot to the relationship to try and keep things stable and working, but I wasn't actually aware of what I needed. So I started to just cut time out of me stuff. So I was still working and doing what I needed for clients and stuff, but what I didn't realize is over time it was the extra stuff that sort of disappeared, the reading and or just even time to play my guitar or even catch up with friends. It was stuff like that started to kind of erode, and I didn't notice it at the time. It wasn't, well, I just started to notice I became more stressed and more despondent at certain times. And really, when I look back, it's because I wasn't clear on what it was I actually needed and what it was that was nourishing me, or that I needed to be nourished. And so therefore, I was confused about why I was so stressed and felt so lacking, which in a way I guess is kind of what you were talking about.
I hear that. That's interesting. It's a good job I did 10, because that was one of mine.
Another 8 to pick from.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Shall I do another one?
Oh, go on then. What's your second one?
Well, it was actually that. But
What's your seventh one?
seventh, let me check. What's the fear? Was actually my seventh one.
Is that the one you want to talk to, or do you want to pick from the other six?
Well, I don't know.
No, why don't you just read them all out? I don't know.
No, I'm going to go with that one because I feel that has a natural flow to the one that you spoke to.
Okay, so tell me what's the thing.
So it was really about exploring what was underneath the why can't I say no. I just thought it was like I can't say no. Yeah, that's just who I am. I just have to do all these things for people because I'm a giving person, which I found out wasn't true because it really pissed me off. But it was in looking at and exploring why I really didn't want to say no or couldn't say no. And I realized that it was the fear around changing dynamics and changing things to the point that if I say no, people might not want to know me, or they might reject me, or I might disappoint them, and I'd be left with a reaction to that. And I think more so because I've been in situations where people have been really volatile towards me. And my idea of any kind of conflict, of any kind of challenge, was that it would somehow become this big thing and I wouldn't be able to handle it. So it was really the fear of losing people and hurting people and like, because that's how powerful I am. I could do all of those things by saying no. Yeah, I think the fear was what would happen if I said no. And it was so useful to understand that it was a fear. And actually, it wasn't real. I just needed to sit with the dragon for a bit.
Tickle his belly.
That's the one. That's the one. And actually, obviously, the realization that if I say no to something I don't want to do and somebody else can't handle that, then really, should they be my friend or should I be in that relationship anyway? I guess was the bigger question. And sometimes I think it was that I avoided looking at. Yeah. So I just kept with what I knew. So it's good. It was very useful for me to be able to understand what I felt would happen if I changed the boundaries.
Well, as if we scripted it, which we don't. And typically, I don't know how I managed to go 7 and that was 7, because my second one is, what am I afraid will happen if I ask for what I want or if I change things? Wow.
It's the universe.
Yeah. Because I had a similar kind of experience. It was interesting. When you started talking about your experience of people pleasing, I was like, oh, this is going to go completely different directions. But no, it doesn't seem to be.
No, that's not how it works.
So, and again, I was contrasting here because at work, I wasn't afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I realised at work, I had that safety there. So it just, a lot of the time, it didn't occur to me to worry about being myself, about being disagreeable, about asking for what I want or saying, like, I think this is a bad idea or whatever. But in relationships, it could be very different. Because, well, when I told you about the ex that, was just happy with me just kind of doing my thing. Mm-hmm. And again, because I wasn't aware of my needs at the time, well, she got an opportunity to do something different and was going to be studying away for a while. And I didn't realise at the time what was going on, but that freaked me the fuck out.
Ah, okay.
And that was when I went, I can't do this.
Right.
I didn't know at the time that's what it was about.
Yeah.
But I just, yeah. And then we split up. But when I look back, a lot of that was about me. It was like, obviously my needs were met. And now the fear is my needs aren't going to be met. I'm going to be, and I think it was probably a fear about being left, about being alone, about,
mm-hmm.
and not being able to cope with that. And so it was just like, can't deal with that.
Yeah.
Better cut things off. So again, it was, it was avoidance.
Mm-hmm. Like a lot of it is in this.
Well, yeah. And again, and I think for me, it was the avoidance of the people pleasing. It was the avoidance of being in that situation that I felt that I would feel uncomfortable in.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose a typical people pleasing pattern in that scenario, if I run that, how would that fit? Would be me going, I don't know, maybe begging, please don't go, or whatever, or trying to make it somehow attractive for her to stay. But my pattern, rather than doing that, was run the fuck away.
Oh my God. I get that. I get that. So that's an interesting way to look at it.
But then that's what I did in a later relationship. Well, that's what I did in a couple of later relationships, actually. And I'm not sure what was different at the time. Maybe because, you know, in that first scenario, she decided that she was kind of leaving, so I was almost cutting my losses or something. I don't know. But I know there were a couple of later relationships where I was afraid of them leaving and being upset. And then that started to change my behaviour. So I would then stop necessarily asking for what I wanted. Or, you know, there was, and one ex that I had, I remember, I think I might have talked about this in a previous episode, but I stopped playing guitar a lot because I was afraid of asking, can I, or just saying I'm going to play guitar, or would it be okay? Because in my mind she'd feel rejected and feel upset, and I think I don't think that was a completely unfounded fear, because I think it had come up. That's what had led me to start doing that, by just, you know, agreeing to stay with her the whole day rather than saying, actually I want to play guitar, actually I want to do this, but then not having the conversation itself was a problem. So coming back to the needs thing, they're not stating our needs, or at least not knowing where we stand. Boundaries, that's how this fits.
That's the one.
I'd gone to I'd been with this girl for, I don't know, only a few months at this point, and I'd gone to a festival overseas, and we'd had a conversation about drugs beforehand, and I thought I'd been clear that, you know, I was fairly liberal-minded about when it comes to drugs. I wasn't anti them or anything, and I'd gone away to this festival, and drugs were decriminalised there, and I remember finding it quite amusing because someone was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna try and get some acid." I was like, "Okay." I'd never tried it, and I was a bit apprehensive about it. I was like, "Oh, you know, psychedelics, that sounds fucking terrifying." Like just hearing stories about, you know, dragons and bad trips and all that stuff. Yeah. I found it really amusing because we're there, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, this guy's got some," and he's like, as this woman's pouring out these drinks from the bar, this guy's counting acid tabs out on the bar, and it's like
I love it.
middle of the day. I'm like, this is a bit fucking surreal. Anyway, on one of the days, a bunch of us dropped acid, and it was great fun. And I got back, and I remember telling her about it, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, I think that was the day we dropped acid." And suddenly, she like, yeah, she switched, like, and she was like, "You know, you've turned into a monster," and or something like that. Like, you're not the person I thought you were, and
wow.
Yeah, which, you know, I get, because in her mind, she had this idea that I was someone else. Like I said, I thought it was that I was clear with her that, you know, I wasn't completely straight edge.
Straight edge. You're a bit wonky.
Well, because I think, you know, in her mind, you know, back then at least, like there was a very defined line between drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Like one is right and one is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way I've seen the world since I was about 18.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But of course, having not talked about that and those boundaries, as it were, those models of the world, that then came up, violated her boundaries, as it were. But of course, then that put the fear into me, because I thought, shit, I might lose her this much. And that seemed like something that I couldn't do at the time. Like I wasn't, like it seemed like something that I was too afraid to even consider.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incidents like that that started me going, oh, I'm going to, not that I would necessarily lie, because, you know, it wasn't like I was saying
okay, it's a different episode.
But no, but that started me being like, you know, it's not okay to do this maybe, or it's not okay to then, and that's why, you know, even just over the playing guitar, it was like, if I say I want to do this and then she's going to feel rejected, maybe I'll just not, maybe it'll be okay if I stay and do this rather than when I want to actually be doing that. But of course, that's when I don't know, started to feel that sense of lack, sense of trappedness, because I was afraid of asking for what I want. I was afraid of having the conversation.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. What was the fear?
I think I was afraid that she would leave, basically, that I would lose her, that I'd be alone. And where it looked, so what I hadn't realized at that point, what I hadn't seen was, if I'm not able to have those kind of conversations and have an open and honest and both see what our needs are and wants and align them, if we can't do that, then we're not able to see, actually, are we aligned? Do we want the same things? And because you know, what I know now is if you can do that and realize that your needs and wants aren't aligned, then maybe it's the wrong fucking relationship. But that didn't even enter into my thinking at the time. It was more like, I think it's like the fear was so strong I might lose that. And there was a sense, I think, at the time also of, I might not find something else is good. And so it was just like, just need to do whatever it is to keep the peace.
Yeah. In which, I guess, ultimately people end up diminishing themselves somehow.
Well, yeah, I did, because basically at the time, like, music was my life. I mean, it's not exactly my life anymore. I still have a massive love of music, but back then, like, playing guitar was the reason why I got up in the morning a lot of the time. And so when I then started to really cut down on that, and through that relationship I gave up a number of things, or I felt I was giving up a number of things, and I just became slowly more miserable, and that was because I was doing less of the stuff that energized me, really, and it was out of fear.
And that's why my next one is talk about this shit.
Talk about this shit.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of, and you spoke to it really beautiful there, just like there's a lot of unsaid shit that people have, expectations and assumptions and all this stuff kind of going on that I was not spoken to. And therein lies the dark hole of despair, is they're not speaking to it. Because I know that I've done it in my life. I know that other people have done it. It's like that point of, well, I thought you would know that. And it's like, no, I don't fucking know that. How am I supposed to just know something unless you tell me, like, I don't like this or I don't appreciate this? And I know I've done it. I've been in that space where I'm like, how could you just not know that I wouldn't like that? Or, and obviously, how is somebody else going to know if I don't say it? And so I guess fear is kind of mixed up in this one as well. Again, obviously, because I guess it's around the fear of what we think is going to happen if we speak to it. I don't know. For me, it just makes a lot more sense that there's that clarity and ownership around, like, if your ex had said, do you know what I mean? Like, I have a problem with, you would have been able to have that conversation before. And I think that's what happens. It's like people wait until the shit hits the fan, and then it's like, then it's a shitstorm, and it's too late to set the boundary in the shitstorm. I guess loving boundaries is the way that I would kind of see it, or agreements or vows to oneself or whatever. But yeah, I think that in the discussion of it, there's a growing understanding, and I feel like there's a connection in that too, of really understanding what I need and what other people. Also, if I don't talk about it, how do I know what I need? Like, that's another thing. It's like around that exploration of, I really didn't know what I needed. Like, when I started doing the work on it, I started to understand, but I'd never really sort of gone, oh, what do I need as a boundary, or, an agreement with somebody, what's okay, what's not okay. And if I don't know that, how can I tell somebody else?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the time when I work with people, even just in general life, within my relationships, and even coaches and therapists, when I kind of talk to them about it, it's like, that's not an active thing, but it's an active thing. Like I know there's boundaries within like sessions and with clients and stuff, but it's just that that's not transferred. But for me, it's like those things are really, really important. Like I know that I have conversations about it with my children. It's like as they've grown throughout their life from childhood to adulthood, obviously the boundaries have needed to change. So it's been an active, participative communication as they've grown, because what all of us need in the dynamic has changed. Yeah. And I think it's a fluid thing, like what we need and want, and it's going to change as we grow. So that communication is, for me, quite central to it, because then we can understand and speak to what's really going on and what's really needed in any situation.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've talked about this offline many times. I'm not a fan of the word boundaries.
Yeah.
For me, boundaries speaks to like it's a protective thing, and for me, that's why I do like the word. And I like your prefix loving boundaries. But for me, like agreements works much better, at least in the context of mutual type relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I suppose sometimes you do have to protect. If someone else isn't playing ball, it is a boundary. It's like if someone else is just out to get you, it's just like actually no, fuck off. There's the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's more of a mutual thing, I think it's agreement works, because otherwise I don't really want to protect myself against you. I don't want to put a line in the sand as such. I want to be able to have this agreement with you where it's a discussion. And well, for me, it's standard codependence, right? If you're not talking about stuff, then it's probably because there's a fear there.
Yeah.
And then there is that just like it's a bit landminey.
Just a little touch risky.
It's like I'm not really sure where to step, but I know sometimes when I step on these things, shit blows up. So I'm now trying to guess.
Right. Yeah. So you're tiptoeing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think absolutely to what you spoke to. I don't think we always know what we need until we talk about it. Sometimes it's not always clear what we need, or if there's something that's a problem for us until we talk it through. And it's something I definitely had years ago back with that relationship I was talking about anyway. One of the challenges was I was scared of having the conversations. I was scared of her leaving, but I also wasn't clear on what I need. I mean, I suppose on some level I did. Like I knew, I just was like, I just wish I could play guitar. But but some of it, I used to volunteer as well, and I gave up volunteering so that I could spend more time on the relationship, and that made sense at the time. But I didn't realize how much of a deficit in my lifeblood, as it were, that was, because I didn't realize how important it was to me until I stopped doing it, or until afterwards, if that makes sense.
And I feel like that exploration is really important, because again, you kind of highlighted the fact that, like, I discovered that boundaries for me were really harsh, like, because in my childhood, boundaries were just really harsh. So the word boundaries for me is like a really spiky, cold, no kind of situation. And it's just like, so because I have loving boundaries, or vows as I call them, for myself, because that's another area that was like, okay, let's look at that. And it's like, they're based in yes as opposed to no. I think it's really important, even in relationships, to be able to have that conversation around, how do you feel about boundaries, and how have they kind of shown up in your life, and what is your understanding of them? Because there's a real difference in understanding what boundaries may have been like for other people. Because I really struggled with it at first, because it was like, boundaries was always a way of somebody telling me, no, you can't do that. And I don't need to tell you why you can't do that. You just can't do that. So that was my experience as a young child of boundaries. And that kind of stayed with me. So I think that point of really understanding what boundaries have looked like for different people within a dynamic also is very, very helpful. So yeah, talk about that shit, people.
Well, I guess for me, this may segue. I was going to say this segues quite nicely onto my third one, but I'm not entirely sure that it does. So I'm going to say it might do. I guess for me, having a boundary or an agreement or whatever, an awareness of your needs, it's that you're saying no to something or someone else so you can say yes to you, right?
Absolutely.
And then if my needs are met, I'm more likely to show up in a way that's actually more helpful to everybody.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I can't, it's that old own oxygen mask first.
Yes.
You're no fucking good helping other people next to you if you're dead.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So my number 3 is get your courage boots on.
Oh, I love that.
Well, because for me, just looking at the other 2 I had, it's the only really logical conclusion. If I've had a look at what it is that I need, and I'm looking at what I'm afraid of happening if I change things or if I ask for that, inevitably there's going to be a bit of a courage gap.
Absolutely.
And the only way to close that is to get the courage boots on and to state my position, to ask for what I need.
Yeah.
And I can think of a few contexts where this happened, like professionally, like in terms of boundaries and people pleasing. Like when early in my career as a thera coach, I was basically making myself available all hours, and that was coming from a place of, but what if I get a client who can only do Sundays at 9 o'clock or whatever.
Love it. Yeah.
But a lot of that was in that it was coming from that place of fear of, well, yeah, what happens if I lose them? What happens if and it was working with my coach around that I saw that. And I remember the conversation he had with me was, well, when would you like to work? I was like, well, I'd like to be able to work business hours. He was like, well, what's the problem? Well, because of, what about this and this and this and this and this. And he was like, well, what kind of business do you want to run? Anyway, so we had this big exploration. But what I realized at the end of it, the only thing that was really stopping me was this courage gap. It was this, I'm scared.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, the only option was to go, well, let's put it in place and see what happens. And funnily enough, it's been fine. Yeah, okay, there's occasionally someone that's like, I work shift work or whatever, or if I work with teachers, for example, that can always be a bit of a challenge. But I'm clearer now on what my boundary is and what exceptions I may or may not have for that. And it's not coming from that place of fear now.
Yeah. That's lovely. So everybody go put your courage boots on.
Well,
that's interesting. That's interesting.
Well, and I also went through a difficult relationship at one point, and another difficult relationship. And I had a real problem with, again, it's just something I didn't realize I was being people pleasing about as such. I mean, it didn't look like that to me at the time, but when I reflect, it was, because it was all about me doing things to try and paper over the cracks, to improve things, to make things better, to avoid things being bad.
Mm-hmm.
But to my detriment, because again, I wasn't aware of my needs, and I was avoiding the fear. And I realized I wasn't standing up for myself, and because I'd been afraid of what would happen if I did stand up for myself. And interestingly, when I did, I remember having a really big fallout with that ex, and normally when we'd have a fallout, things could be quite difficult, and she could be quite hurtful, and I'd always be, when she'd like calm down, I'd be like, it's cool, it's okay, don't worry, like I get it, mm-hmm. I understand. And I did, and that wasn't me just people pleasing, like I was being understanding of where she was at. But I also wasn't really factoring me into the occasion, into the equation. Yeah. And hadn't really added up, why am I so bloody miserable? And then one time it happened, there was this really big blowout, and I was just like, no, that's it. Yeah. And when I said, that's it, and I meant it congruently, mm-hmm. well, then actually things really changed. Things really, really switched. And then she was saying to me, look, I'm sorry, please don't go. Whereas, in the past she'd been the one to almost threaten me with leaving. And I hadn't expected that. It's like, that wasn't in my mind. It wasn't in my experience. It seemed like an impossibility to go there, because I wouldn't be able to cope. And what was interesting was when I then had the courage to say that and go, look, I'm choosing me. Like I said, the way she reacted was like, oh, I hadn't expected that. It was just completely different.
I guess that's the thing, right? The fear of what we may experience can hold us back from actually getting what we might need.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think definitely when I've worked with children and young people, it's really very easy to see that good boundaries or agreements provides almost like an embrace, because then they know where they're at. People know where they're at within that embrace. It's like, okay, this is okay, rather than having to suddenly just go, no, that's not okay, once they've done something. Because then it's like, okay, but you never told me it was like not okay. So it's like, that's the point of safety, you know, having that loving embrace of boundaries, because then people know where they're at. I feel like that's quite important.
Yeah, it's that knowing where you stand, right?
Yeah, because then it helps you to kind of go, okay, I know what this picture looks like a little bit. It's not like completely unknown to me. And it's not just going to turn into a big fuck off confrontation if I do something and I've got no idea that I've kind of crossed a line of any kind.
Yeah, and I think when I think about work, for example, that company I worked for. Now, I say I knew where I stand. You know, arguably this is just my perception of where I stood.
Yeah.
Maybe there were many times I nearly got fired and wasn't aware of it. But as far as I was concerned, I knew where I stood, and therefore I was safe to speak my opinion. Whereas in some of my relationships, I didn't feel I knew where I stood.
Yeah. I
guess, or at least it wasn't safe to be standing in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore I didn't feel able to ask what I needed, or to speak my needs, as it were.
Yeah. The overall essence in terms of boundaries and not doing shit that people don't want to do is about understanding what you need and what other people need. And actually, the only way to really do that is to talk about it and to have a conversation about it and to practice. Yeah. Right? It is a practice thing. Because that was another one of mine, but it's like, yeah, practice saying no. Like, it doesn't have to be a harsh and horrible no. It can just be a very, this isn't for me right now. I can't do that. It doesn't have to be a no. Fuck off no.
Or practice choosing you. Maybe it's not always no, but if it's choosing me first.
Well, practice saying yes to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, any closing thoughts on people-pleasing, boundaries?
Yes. I actually have a quote today for my.
Oh, you prepared.
I did. Because I love this quote. Okay. So it's, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. And that's by Brené Brown. So I love that quote. So that is my closing thought.
Cool. My closing thought is choose yourself.
Love it.
Another episode. Done and dusted.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Notcast podcast, Life, Love, Misery and Deep Shit, with your TheraCoach hosts,
David Bird
and Amy Dave.
David is a transformative coach and hypnotherapist who guides his clients on a journey of self-exploration and transformation to smash the shit out of their mental stumbling blocks and send their emotional baggage packing, helping them to get back in the driver's seat, create a more powerful, loving connection to life, and unleash onto the world their bright, shining light of authentic give-a-fuckness. You can connect with David at his website, dbch.co.uk. That's dbch.co.uk.
Amy is a transformative spiritual and self-love coach and therapist who takes people on a powerful journey towards self-love and personal transformation. She empowers her clients to discover the truth of who they really are, their true purpose, and the truest expression of themselves, whilst enabling them to navigate life and its challenges with ease, grace, and above all, love. Create relationships that rock their world and let go of the toxic shit that holds them back. You can connect with Amy on her Facebook at facebook.com/amy.dave11. That's AMI.DAVE.11.
The Notcast.